Hello friends, welcome to CEC Gurukul Live Lectures. Dear friends, this is our another session on career counseling called Pratibha Sambardhan. And dear friends, today we are here for you with a very interesting topic. Today we are going to talk on startup ecosystems in India. So friends, you might be wondering that how an interesting topic is here on which we are going to discuss, and we would like to tell you all that for this discussion on the topic we have with us in our studios Mr. Karan Yadav. Mr. Karan Yadav is a startup consultant, and he keeps on motivating the youth too, so they could think about themselves, they can think about starting a career in startups. So let's welcome our guest, Mr. Karan Yadav, and let's try to understand first of all what are startups. Hello, Mr. Karan Yadav. Welcome to this session.
Hello, Zikmitaji. Thank you so much for having me.
All our pleasure having you here. Now, when we talk about the word startup, we start thinking multiple of things. And when we are talking about the career, then yes, startups comes to our mind. We can have a career in this area, but sometimes we are confused how to go about. Now, first of all, we would like to know through you, what are startups? How would you define what startups are?
So, it's very simple. So, a startup can be any business, right? But the main point of a startup is that it is looking to innovate. So, whether it's a product or a service, it always strives to improve on existing products or services or create something really new and revolutionary that changes the life of people. So, that's how you define a startup.
So now talking on the broader line, what would you like to say more about the startups so that the students who might be watching us, and how can one go for the startups? What are the challenges? How the startups are funded? Kindly explain us this in detail.
So yes, as I told you earlier, so a startup can be any new business. Basically, the key factor is that it's looking to innovate a product or a services. So generally, within startups, you'll find three or four similar characteristics. One is startups are really fast paced, right? So they strive to grow quickly, rapidly, try to achieve their goals very fast. Second is they are trying to solve a problem in the industry, whether it's, we've seen startups in hotels, in e-commerce, in food delivery, in logistics, right? They all try to solve some existing problem, right? Third, again, they're innovative. They try to disrupt existing industries or create, very new industries that will help the country in the long run. And fourth, startups start, with very limited resources. It'll be a very small team with, limited resources, maybe, 5 to 10 members who are looking to, grow that startups. So these are the basic characteristics that you'll see in a startup. Right. So, in the last couple of decades, we've seen some really inspiring startups that have taken place in our country. So, some popular ones include Zomato, Swiggy, which we all know, which is into food delivery disruption. Then we have Oyo that has provided very cheap cost but high value hotels for everyone in the country. Then we have startups like Nykaa, which is into lifestyle, Paytm, which is into fintech. That's been part of the UPI revolution. That's again changed our life completely. Right, so these are some examples of startups. Then we can move on to how the typical organization structure looks within a startup, right? So a startup is usually founded by someone who's really driven, who has identified one problem and is looking to, solve that problem for the masses. So a startup can have, either even one founder, it can have two founders, it can have multiple founders, but typically you will see that a startup will have about two founders, two co-founders. Why that is important is because there's so much to do when you're starting a company that you need all the support that you can gather, and when you have a partner as a co-founder, right, you can divide those tasks. So in a two founder startup, you will see that one founder usually takes care of the technology side of it. So they'll be taking care of the engineers, the tech team, then the product team, they'll be taking care of the research and development of that product, further innovation, so on and so forth. So that's the tech founder. The second founder that you will see will be a business oriented founder. So they'll be taking care of, sales and partnerships. They'll be taking care of marketing, of human resources. They'll be taking care of the finance team, which includes, legal, accounting, compliances, and also the operations team. And between the two, you will often see that there'll be a strategy team, which will, create the general strategy for the startup, how they should move ahead in the future. And they'll also be taking care of investor relationships if they've picked up funding from somewhere. So this is the general organization structure of a startup. Yes, now, you know, in India, right now we have more than a lakh and a half recognized startups, right? And one fact that you will hear everyone saying across the world is startups hardly become successful. And it's true, 90% of the startups fail, but again, those 10% that work, right, become very big and inspire an entire generation. So, while anyone wants to, start a startup, go on their entrepreneur journey, they need to, keep in mind these five or six factors that can make or break your startup, right? So traits in a good founder are that, the founder must have a vision, right? So the vision must be something which is very clear and compelling, right? Something that excites the founder in the morning, every morning that they wake up. It should be a vision that helps them sell their business to investors and customers, right? Number two is the company culture. Through this vision, you should be able to create a culture within your startup, right, where each and every employee is aligned with it, and each and every employee is bought into the idea. They can innovate, they can collaborate, right, and they can grow that startup together. It becomes very important in the long run, where employee attrition can take place, right? If you have very strong fundamentals, you will be able to keep that core team and grow them with you. A third aspect is detail orientation for a founder, right? So a founder, the job is 24/7, right? 365 days a year. So a founder must know each and every aspect of their business, every small detail, right? That's when they'll be able to, actually create a big picture and follow through with the vision. Fourth aspect is patience, right? For any founder, right, failures, rejections will be mostly a weekly thing, right? It might be in the form of, the product maybe not selling as rapidly as you wanted to. It might be, you're not getting funding, right? Your, bank balance is going down. It might even be small things like getting a negative customer feedback, right? So these small failure setbacks take place every day. So founder has to have grit, has to have resilience, has to be patient for the long run. Fifth is adaptability, right? So, in a rapidly growing market, right, things change every day, right? Technologies evolve, right? So, the founder must, have the courage to be able to pivot at any given point of time, whatever is necessary to keep that business, sustainable, keep that business growing. So, you need to be able to make these quick changes to be able to be successful, right? Lastly, we have customer obsession, right? So what happens with a lot of businesses is that, after a point of time, they stop really, giving attention to how the customers are reacting to their product and services, what sort of customer service they are getting, right? So for a founder, customer has to be king. You have to make sure that, the customers are meeting, receiving what they're expecting, and you're improving every day. Okay, moving on, we can talk about how funding generally works in startups, right? So initially, when you're starting as a founder, right, you might have very limited resources, right? You might not even have access to money. So typically, founders start with using their savings, right? This is called bootstrapping, right? This is when you're using your own personal savings to be able to grow your business. Although this is the first stage, we have seen startups in this country that are still, bootstrapped but have become huge, right? So after using your own savings, if you want, more money to be able to grow and expand, the second stage is called angel investment, right? This is where an individual is investing in your startup because they have belief in the founder, right? That this founder, with their determination and their idea, can do something. So, angel investors initially help you with a small amount of money, but most importantly with mentorship, right? The third stage is pre-seed and seed stage, right? This is actually when you have an idea, you have received some encouragement from investors like an angel investor, but now it's time for you to really develop your product and push it out in the market. So this is where you raise your seed or pre-seed fund. This typically happens in incubators, right, across the country. Incubators or accelerators are basically programs that help you in product development, help you with market access, help you with initial funds, right? Now the fourth stage, after you've established product market fit, you are ready to scale in the market, you are ready to expand, is when you can pick up venture capital funding. So venture capitals are bigger institutional organizations that provide you funding opportunities, right? So within VCs, you have terms like Series A, Series B, Series C, which a lot of viewers might have heard before. So it's nothing but the stage at which you're picking up the funding and the amount of funds that you're picking up. So a Series A can be anywhere between 2 crores to, let's say, 15 crores. Series B would be up to, let's say, 50 to 80 crores. And Series C funding can be up to, 200-300 crores, right? It depends on what stage of your journey you're at as a startup, and how fast you want to expand, how fast you want to cover markets, so on and so forth. Private equity funding, right? So if you want to again become a global startup, right, you've reached a stage where you've established your business very well in your local markets. You have a fair idea of your customers, your product, your market, right? And already received so much funding, but you have to reach the next stage of maybe acquiring other businesses, or cracking some very very intricate technology. That's where you receive private equity funding, right? And of course, the last stages, which a lot of people see as a success of a startup, is your IPO, which is the initial public offering. There's also a stage where your initial investors, like your angel investor, who had shown you so much trust at the very beginning, can get a huge exit and can make huge returns. Yes, so this is how generally funding works in startups, right? So again, within all 5 stages after bootstrapping, you can be supported by private players, or there are a lot of government initiatives that also help you in each stage to raise funding. Now, moving on, for anyone who wants to start a venture, right, like a startup, it's very important for us to know exactly the challenges that a startup faces, right? So number one is funding and financial constraints. Again, there are 10 other companies probably who have the same idea as you, who are trying to enter the market and are trying to raise fund, but funding is not always easily available. You have to be very hardworking, you need to have a vision, you need to believe in your vision, right? And you need to have a proven sort of a product maybe which is working, or you can probably show a vision that that product can work, is when you can eventually think of raising some funds. But again, you have to be very clear about your basics. You need to know your numbers well, you need to study the market very well, you need to have a lot of knowledge within your industry to be able to start raising funds. Second aspect is product market fit struggles. Again, so you might think that something is a really good idea, right? Few people might tell you that yes, this is a good idea, right? A few people might start buying your products and services, but again, if it's actually not solving a huge problem, then you'll always have scaling challenges. Third is hiring and retaining talent. This is again one of the challenges, because there's so much competition, right? Not everyone would like to join a startup. They would like to, join a stable, high-paying corporate job, maybe. So hiring in a small startup can be a struggle. You of course have options where you give certain percentage of your company to your initial employees so that they join on a lower salary, but hiring can be an issue, right? So you need to be able to find the right sort of people, and this often happens if you attend workshops, if you attend entrepreneur gatherings, so on and so forth. Fourth, aspect to this, the challenges I might say, is customer acquisition and retention, right? So acquiring a customer sometimes can be very tricky these days with the advent of social media, right? That's a good tool to do it. However, still, for acquiring a customer, you have to spend a lot on marketing, and as a young startup, you might not have access to funds like your competitors do to be able to acquire that first customer, right? And of course, retaining that customer would also take a lot of effort in terms of providing very good service, and also be spending a little bit on marketing. Uh, Fourth aspect is founder burnout and investment pressure. Again, as a founder, you have to be very courageous, you have to be very resilient, you have to be open to failures, right? Still you need to have that vision, otherwise after a point of time you might just feel like giving up, but you can't do that. You have to keep going and going. Second aspect to this is, once you pick up funding, you might get a lot of pressure from your investors to scale at a level that they want, for them to start earning some money from their investment. So you have to take care of all of these aspects before you start a startup, and also after you've started and want to scale. Okay, moving on, we can have a quick glance as how the startup ecosystem has evolved in India, right? So in India, in back in 2016, there were merely 500 recognized startups, and today, as in the end of last year, we saw 1.5 lakh startups present in the country. And you can clearly see that since 2020, there has been constant increase in the number of startups, whether it was during the period of COVID, whether it was during the period of low funding, years like 2022, 2023. Startups in this country have grown exceptionally over the last 5 to 10 years. Moving ahead, so we can discuss, where you will majorly find these startups, right? So there are certain hubs in this country which we probably all know of. We have Gurgaon, Delhi, right? Then we have Mumbai, then we have Bangalore. The ecosystems here are great. There are a lot of startups, there are a lot of incubation opportunities, a lot of funding opportunities, a lot of office spaces. So we find a lot of startups here. But what is amazing in our country is that all our states and UTs have recognized startups, and close to 779 districts, which is almost all the districts in our country, has at least one startup, which goes to show the push that the government has made, right? The support that the government has provided to our startups in this country. Right. So in the last few years, we've seen that there are certain sectors in which startups have really grown and done well. One of these is the IT services. So that includes IT consulting, your product development, application developments, and others. Right. Second is healthcare and life sciences. So we've seen a lot of startups in health and wellness, in healthcare services, in pharmaceutical, in health tech, so on and so forth. Third industry is education. Of course, education is probably an industry because of which startups have been so well known in this country. There have been a lot of startups within the education technology sector. A lot of people have started using platforms instead of your traditional tutoring to study. So a lot of startups have come up in skill development, in e-learning, so on and so forth. Moving ahead, we can have a quick look at the funding trends that have taken place in Indian startups over the last 10 years, right? So since 2014 till 2024, Indian startups have raised more than $158 billion in fund, which is an exceptionally high number, which is probably the one of the highest in the world, right? So you can see even in the presentation that after 2016 there was a slight jump, in 2017 in terms of the funding which was raised by Indian startups. This was because of a lot of liquidity in terms of VCs, venture capitals, investing money in Indian startups, right? Then again, after funding being more or less constant till 2020, we saw a huge jump again in 2021, right? Now from 2021 to 2024, on an average, there have been about 1,000 deals a year, which again goes to show the quality of startups that have come up in the country. Again, we can correlate this to the quality because you receive funding, this sort of funding, if the quality of the product and services and the innovations being done by the startups are very high, right? Now you can see a gradual drop after 2021, right? That was more along the lines of market correction. There was some liquidity issues globally, right? So on and so forth. But again, now since 2024, we've again seen a slight raise in funding levels. Moving on, so just to summarize the startup economy in India currently. So as a country, we're the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, right? So total number of direct jobs that have been created by startups are exceptional, more than 16 lakhs, right? Total number of active investors in the country, in this country, are about 1.9K, which is also exceptional, right? We have 30 plus startups which have already been publicly listed. So we discussed about IPO earlier. So we already have 30 such startups, and we're on track to have many more. Right? So you'll see the term Sunicorn. Sunicorn is basically, when a startup reaches around $1 billion in revenue. So you'll also see a term called unicorns. Unicorns are the ones which have already achieved this level of revenue, and Sunicorns are the ones that are about to reach that level. Right? A lot of founders and startups actually, when they start their startup, have this vision that, okay, in 5 years we want to become the next unicorn. So this is something that drives them. So we discussed about the number of, the amount of funding that Indian startups had raised. And again, an exceptional number is the combined valuation of Indian unicorns, more than 400, billion dollars. This goes to show that startups in this country have the potential to, actually be the backbone of innovation for our country and help our country achieve many, many ambitious targets for the future, like becoming a, developed nation by 2047, and also many other long-term visions like achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2070. So yes, startups are extremely important for our nation. Okay, moving on. Like I mentioned earlier, the government has really focused on promoting startups in our country. So one of the biggest initiatives that the government of India had taken was the Startup India initiative, which was launched on 16th January 2016. Right, and the vision was to build a very strong ecosystem to support our startups and entrepreneurs. Right. So within Startup India initiative, the government has created an ecosystem of services and support that they want to provide to startups. One of the most important ones is investment opportunities, right? So the government has launched 3 such programs. One is the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme. Second one is the Fund of Funds for startups, and third is Credit Guarantee Scheme for startups. We'll talk about these in more detail at a later point. Then they've also pushed ecosystem development. Here the government has built its own website, the Startup India website, right, which acts as a digital platform for many things. Number one, with the Bhaskar digital platform that you see, that is basically to connect all different stakeholders, whether it's investors, whether it's startups, whether it's mentors, right, so that all of them can be on the same platform. They can all be visible, and it's easier for startups and the entire ecosystem to network. Second such portal is the MARG mentorship portal. This is again a AI driven digital portal which allows matchmaking between mentors and startups. So like we had discussed earlier, for a startup, the first step is to get a mentor, get that initial bit of investment so that they have the confidence to go out, and MARG mentorship platform is one platform that does it. Third aspect is incubation. Again, incubation we had discussed earlier. So incubations are essentially programs that enroll startups and help them with product development, help them with initial funding, help them with office space, for networking opportunities, so on and so forth. So the government, not just the central government, but many state governments have come up with very elaborate and very good incubation programs to support startups in every district, whether it's in tier 1, tier 2 cities or metro cities. Third is the capacity building aspect. So the government of India has taken all states together in this, initiative to push startups and to help startups, right? So the state startup ranking is one such initiative. What the government does on an annual basis is comes out with a ranking of states in terms of how they've performed in different aspects of promoting startups, whether it's funding opportunities, whether it's mentorship, whether it's promoting women entrepreneurs, whether it's promoting smaller startups in smaller cities, whether it's promoting younger entrepreneurs, right? Second one is the National Startup Advisory Council. So this is a council that has been formed by the government that includes government officials as well as private individuals, right, who strive to create the best policies possible for the startups in this country to grow, right? Thirdly, we have something called the National Startup Awards. Again, this is an annual exercise where the government awards the top best startups who have created the best impacts, best job opportunities, most innovative products across sectors, whether it's agriculture, whether it's healthcare, whether it's IT, so on and so forth. So what this does is it creates a very inclusive environment for the startups. It provides recognition to startups, and it provides an inspiration to the entire country to see how these startups are performing and how well they're doing. Right, moving on. So now we can, discuss a little bit more on how the government has been supporting startups in terms of funding. So essentially, we have three major initiatives that the government has pushed, right? Three major schemes. The first one is the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme. So from the name, you can see that it's called Seed Fund Scheme. So as we discussed earlier in our slide, right? Seed fund is something that you require initially to start developing your product, to get some proof of concept that okay, my product or my service is working. So you can start doing product trials, you can start entering the appropriate market, and eventually start selling it on a good scale, right? So how this scheme works is that we have incubators that the government first selects, right? So each incubator, so these incubators are again selected from all over the country, right? So once selected, funds are disbursed to these incubators, right? Then these incubators study the startups who have applied, go through their vision, go through what they've been doing, and then provide grants and seed funds to these startups, right? And as of end of 2024, about 200 plus incubators have been onboarded through the scheme, right? Over 2,500 startups have already been supported through the scheme. Over 900 crore rupees have been given out within the scheme. Now, the second scheme that we talk about is the Fund of Funds for Startups.
Mr. Karan, I think we have a lot of time.
Yes.
We can, talk on more and more of
Sure.
schemes. But before that, I would like to ask you, government is doing a commendable job, and lots of people have been benefited through the government initiatives, as explained by you. Now, as a common man, if I have an idea and I want to have my own startup, the question arises whom to approach, कहाँ जाऊँ? Because the common man is not aware. हमारे पास idea तो है, पर जाना किसके पास है? Government की initiatives भी हैं. Where to search about and how to go about? That is one of the important questions.
No, absolutely, and it's a very relevant question. So, if you're a new entrepreneur and you have decided that a product and services that you thought of will help the masses, right? The first thing that you should actually do, which again is part of one of the government initiatives, is go to the Startup India Initiative website, right?
Wonderful.
So that website is a hub that will provide you with all resources, whether it's free knowledge books, right, on how to proceed, how to develop your product, or it will also help linking you to these incubators who you can speak with, or these mentors that we discussed you can speak to, right, and see how you can take your product and service forward. From there, it will be a great beginning, and further you can then again apply to these incubation programs, apply to other government programs that help you on your entrepreneurial journey.
That's why we say research is very important.
Yes, absolutely.
Even if you have an idea, whether your idea will work out or not, and if it works out, then what are the initiatives for you,
Absolutely.
as explained by you through this session of ours, and we would be getting more knowledge through you, because we believe that this is one of the finest sessions where our dreams will definitely have the feathers and will fly. That is for sure. So, dear friends, we believe that you might have gathered lots and lots of information through this session, and if you are planning to have your own startup, keep watching us, keep writing us. Your feedbacks are very, very important for us. Thank you.